Humans have endured a lot throughout our existence, from tsunamis and volcanic eruptions to plagues and wars. But the harshest period in Earth's history took place over thousands of years and is commonly known as the Ice Age, from somewhere around 2.6 million years ago until around 11,700 years ago. Our planet went through several glacial cycles where the temperature dropped and massive ice sheets covered the land. Today, we tend to look back at the Ice Age as a mostly positive thing. Cannibalism was common during the Ice Age, and entire settlements could be wiped out by rival groups. Humans were constantly fighting for resources and territory. During the height of the Ice Age, about 20,000 years ago, humans competed for food and space with predators such as the saber-toothed tiger, the dire wolf, and the giant short-faced bear. With all the hunting and gathering, you'd be too busy to get fat. This means no cotton or linen, just furs and hides. Making clothes out of animal skins would have been a long and difficult process, but it was necessary for survival. It wouldn't be easy, but it would definitely be an adventure. If you liked the video, don't forget to share it with your friends and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, maybe you'd become a great hunter or a skilled artist. Who knows? The point is that life during the Ice Age was full of challenges, but also opportunities for those who were willing to adapt and innovate. It was a time when humans had to be resourceful, brave, and resilient to survive. But it was also a time when humans developed new technologies, social structures, and ways of thinking that allowed them to thrive. So if you ever find yourself complaining about the problems in your life, just remember that things could be a lot worse. You could have been born during the Ice Age without proper clothing. You'd be vulnerable to hypothermia and frostbite, which could be fatal in cold temperatures. However, making clothes out of animal skins would have been a difficult task. It would require tools to cut and sew the skins together, and the finished product would be heavy and uncomfortable. You could say that fashion during the Ice Age was basically survival gear. In fact, you'd probably be pretty skinny, because there just wasn't enough food to go around. Humans of the Ice Age enjoyed a variety of activities, including playing games, telling stories, and creating art. Some popular games included a type of checkers played with stones, and a ball game similar to basketball played with a ball made of animal hide. Storytelling was a common form of entertainment and a way to pass down knowledge and traditions. Art during the Ice Age took many forms, including cave paintings, petroglyphs, and sculptures. These works of art often depicted animals, hunting scenes, or geometric patterns. It's hard to say whether or not the caveman ever created any modern art, but he certainly had his own unique style. Speaking of food, you definitely wouldn't have a McDonald's or a KFC nearby. No, your diet would consist mainly of wild fruits and vegetables, nuts, and maybe some fish or small game if you're lucky. In fact, many scientists believe that humans only survived the Ice Age because they learned how to cook their food. Cooking made meat and plants more digestible and allowed humans to survive on less food. It also provided a way to kill bacteria and parasites, which may have helped prevent disease. However, cooking would have been a difficult process during the Ice Age. Early humans would have had to find ways to start fires in cold and wet conditions, gather materials for cooking, and build shelters to protect their food. The saber-toothed cat, for example, was larger than a modern tiger and had enormous fangs that could deliver a fatal blow. The dire wolf was also larger than today's gray wolf and had stronger jaws and teeth. As for the giant short-faced bear, well, you don't want to mess with a creature that weighed over 1,000 kilograms and stood over 3 meters tall on 2 legs. So it's safe to say that if you were born a human during the Ice Age, you'd need to be strong, resilient, and adaptable to survive. After all, it gave rise to many of the megafauna that we know and love today, including elephants, bison, camels, and horses. This lasted for about 1,300 years before the Holocene epoch began, marking the beginning of the current warm period. How would your daily life look like if you were born during the Ice Age? Well, first of all, you wouldn't be able to read, write, or use the internet because those things hadn't been invented yet. There would be no electricity, indoor plumbing, or air conditioning. In fact, you wouldn't even have a house or a car. Life during the Ice Age was tough, and there was no room for comfort. Men typically spent their days hunting animals and gathering food, while women gathered berries and other plants, took care of children, and prepared food. Children would help by gathering small animals and plants, and would learn how to use tools from their parents. The younger Dryas caused major changes in the environment and affected the way humans lived. Plants and animals began to die off again, and humans had to migrate once again. In fact, some scientists believe that the younger Dryas contributed to the extinction of several Ice Age animals, including the woolly mammoth. However, we can't forget that this period was extremely harsh on early humans. Throughout the Ice Age, people had to contend with massive predators and changing environments, which made finding food and shelter nearly impossible. During the colder months, temperatures could drop to 30 degrees Celsius or more. This meant that people couldn't rely on farming or growing crops. Instead, they had to migrate with their herds of animals. This lifestyle was extremely nomadic and difficult, but it was necessary for survival. To make matters worse, humans of this time period didn't have access to iron tools or weapons. They were forced to use crude stone tools and animal bones to hunt. Sometimes they even resorted to eating insects and small animals. Just imagine the kind of person who decided to take a bite out of a beetle or a worm. Also, disease was widespread during this time period, and there was no effective way to treat illnesses. Small cuts and scrapes could lead to infection and death. People also had to deal with parasites such as lice, fleas, and ticks, which carried diseases that could be fatal. People also had to deal with parasites such as lice, fleas, and ticks, which carried diseases that could be fatal. Most people think of the Ice Age as a time when woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers roamed the earth, but the reality of this era was much more complex and dangerous than we often imagine. So what would it really be like to be born a human during this time? What would your life be like? Let's find out. The worst time in history to be born a human, the Ice Age. The term Ice Age actually refers to a series of ice ages rather than a single continuous period. According to scientists, our planet has gone through at least 20 major glacial cycles since the current Ice Age began around 2.6 million years ago. Each cycle includes an advance and retreat of the ice sheets. Currently, we're in an interglacial period. The last glacial maximum peaked around 20,000 years ago. During this peak, vast ice sheets extended as far south as the northernmost parts of Mexico, the southern tip of South America, the middle of China, and Spain.
Ow.
These ice sheets covered huge areas of land, which also contained numerous lakes, rivers, and even waterfalls. As the climate started getting colder and drier, many plant species went extinct while others migrated southwards. Large animals also migrated in search of warmer climates. However, some species, such as the woolly mammoth and the woolly rhinoceros, adapted to the cold and stayed in the north. Around 13,000 years ago, the global temperature started rising, and the glaciers began to melt. If you managed to survive the cold, predators, and diseases, you might have been killed by other humans. At the end of the Ice Age, around 11,700 years ago, the Earth experienced an event known as the Younger Dryas, which caused another period of intense cold. But let's say you somehow managed to survive all of this. Another thing you wouldn't have to worry about during the Ice Age is obesity. Humans have long dreamed of escaping the cold and dark winters of Earth by traveling to other planets and moons. It's not surprising that Mars is the top choice for this, because it's close to Earth and has a lot of frozen water. After hearing about them, you'll be glad you don't live in such harsh conditions. Now, science fiction has become popular because of the way it explores humanity's hopes and fears of venturing into space. But when it comes to science reality, there are some things that need to be considered if humanity ever wants to live on Mars. The psychological stress of living during the Ice Age was unimaginable. Every decision was a matter of life and death. Every day was a gamble with fate. The constant pressure of survival left little room for joy, creativity, or even rest. Imagine raising a family knowing that any small mistake, a slip on the ice, eating the wrong berries, or wandering too far from the group could mean death. Mental health, a concept we talk about so much today, was entirely overshadowed by physical survival. Chronic stress would have been a constant companion. Trauma from losing loved ones, whether to starvation, injury, or animal attacks, was routine. There were no doctors, no medicine, and no help. If you got sick or injured, your body had to fight it off alone, or you simply died. Broken bones often never healed correctly. Infections from simple cuts could turn deadly in days. Dental abscesses, arthritis, frostbite, and malnutrition left many people physically broken long before old age. But what was old age in the Ice Age? Reaching 30 years old was considered elderly. Yet despite this, humans endured. Why? The answer lies in one of our greatest evolutionary advantages: social bonding. Small groups of 20 to 30 individuals often travel together, sharing responsibilities and resources. Elders, those rare few who survived past their 30s, were precious sources of knowledge. They knew where to find edible plants, how to track game, and how to avoid dangerous predators. Storytelling, even in its most primitive form, likely became essential for passing down survival strategies. Around the evening fire, these early humans may have shared tales of bravery, danger, and loss. Technology, primitive as it was, slowly evolved out of necessity. Better spears, stone tools, and perhaps most crucially, tailored clothing made from animal hides and sinew helped humans cling to life in the cold. Archaeological finds show evidence of needles made from bone signs that Ice Age people stitched together garments to stay warm. Caves became temporary shelters, but most groups were nomadic, following the migrations of the animals they depended on. Still, even with all this, survival was never guaranteed. Every winter, people vanished. Small groups disappeared into the snow, leaving no trace. Some families starved together. Others froze during unexpected blizzards. For thousands of years, this was the normal human experience. But the most astonishing thing? Our ancestors didn't give up. Somehow, against all odds, they kept going. Generation after generation, they endured the cold, the hunger, the predators, the loneliness, and the pain. They adapted, they learned, and eventually, they emerged from the Ice Age. When the Earth finally began to warm about 11,700 years ago, it marked the end of the last glacial period and the beginning of what we now call the Holocene. Forests returned, rivers flowed freely again. Animals migrated back into once frozen lands. Agriculture soon followed, and with it, the birth of civilization. So the next time you complain about your phone dying, your Wi-Fi being slow, or your coffee being cold, remember at least you weren't born during the Ice Age. Because for humans, that may have been the worst time in history to be alive. Today we'll look at the difficulties our ancestors faced while living on Earth. During the Ice Age, H2 mental strain. H2. It wasn't just the cold and the hunger that broke people.